Hey guys, so today I'm going to be talking about how to learn tarot. There are a couple of misconceptions about tarot. One of them being you have to be gifted your very first tarot deck. You do not have to be gifted your very first tarot deck. I'm not 100% sure where this started, but I know it started like back in 2020 when they were like, it became a huge thing to learn tarot and spirituality, and I feel like it was mostly just a way to gatekeep a little bit. You know, some of the people who had already learned tarot, they were like, oh, well, I kind of want to feel special. I kind of want this to be my thing. So they put this out there to make it harder for other people to learn. But you definitely don't have to be gifted your first tarot deck, number one. When you are learning tarot, it's good to get a tarot deck that you feel connected to, that you're like, you know what, I feel a special connection to this. I really like this tarot deck. One that just speaks to you is really good. Another way of picking a good tarot deck is I would recommend a Rider-Waite-Smith based tarot deck, just because the symbolism in this, the imagery, is pretty easy to read off of, right? So that is what I would recommend, but you don't have to. What's super important when you first get a tarot deck is connecting to your tarot deck. There are a couple of different ways to connect to your tarot deck. I have a video on that, but just to go over a couple of things, you can do an introduction tarot spread. You can just use your tarot cards. You can sleep with your tarot cards on your bed. You can meditate with your tarot cards. Just use them, hold them in your hands, carry them with you. Those are just some of the quick, easy ways that you can really just connect to your tarot deck. Sometimes people ask me, well, how do you learn? You know, one of the best ways to learn is, number one, just do it. Just go for it. You know, just start learning, start practicing. I am a big book person, right? So I grabbed a book and I was like, okay, this book has all of the meanings, and I would do the tarot cards and look at the meanings. You could also just look up the meanings online if you're like, I'm not a huge book person. There are YouTube videos where it's like, okay, let's go over all of these meanings, and there are some that I really like where it's like this, telling the tale of the fool's journey, right? It starts with the fool at the beginning of his journey, and it ends with him being whole, complete, having learned and conceptualized everything that he was supposed to learn and conceptualize, right? So that's just basically, how do you learn? What's the best way for you to understand? But whatever resource that you like, I would, especially if it's not like a book and it's like a video or an audio, I would take notes. I would be like, okay, let me do that. Just because it's very helpful. It's nice to have something to look back at when you're doing your readings. But just do the tarot readings, right? I wouldn't recommend when you first start to do like some super complicated, elaborate spread, just because when you're doing a reading, all of the cards connect in some way. You know, it's like this happens because of this connects to that, and it's already hard enough to be like, okay, well, what does this one card mean in the concept of what question I asked? You know, how does this card answer that question? And then you have to connect it to other cards, and trying to do that at the beginning can be a little complicated. It can be a little hard. So I would recommend just start off with very simple one card readings and go from there. And what's also pretty interesting is, a lot of the times the answer is not just a very simple yes or no. Like, while I would like it to be a very simple yes or no, sometimes the answer isn't yes or no. Sometimes you ask a question like, is this person good for me? Is this person going to make me happy? And you get very complicated like cards, like the Chariot in the reverse, right? Like, or the Chariot in the upright. And the Chariot in the upright is a very focused, hard work, and determined card. It's like, okay, I'm focused, I'm zoned in, you know, like I'm working towards my goals, I'm planning the plans, and I'm doing the stuff, right? And so you see this card and you're like, how does that relate to if this person is going to make me happy, you know? Because this technically isn't a happy card, right? And depending on the other cards that are around it, I would say this is just one of those people who's going to make you more focused, more determined, more zoned in on your goals. You know, sometimes the answer is not like a very simple yes or no. Sometimes it's like, not that, but this. And so trying to figure that out can be hard. Another thing that I think is really helpful when doing tarot readings is to break the cards down, right? Break them down by, number one, their suits, right? We have the minor arcana, which Swords, which is all about thoughts, intellects, thinking. Cups, which is about emotions. Pentacles, which is about stability, safety, comfortability, finance. And Wands, which is about passions and desires, you know? So I'd break it down by its suit, be like, okay, this is what this suit means. So obviously we're in the realm of that. And then we also have its numerology, right? Like, what does its numerology mean? 5 is usually a card of hardship, a card of struggle, okay? It just helps. And then you break it down by what are the colors that I see in this picture? Like, what do these colors speak to me? What do they mean to me? What am I getting? And then break it down by what is actually happening in the picture. You know, like you see these people, they're not very well off. They have very little clothes on. You know, it's cold outside. They're struggling. They're trying to seek a place of comfort, a place of shelter. And what's very interesting is there's a place of shelter right behind them. And they're just walking past it. So it really helps if you break it down and if you go step by step, just to help you start to understand everything. What's also very helpful is repetitivity. Okay, there's this thing where I heard that you're supposed to do tarot daily, and that's not necessarily true. You don't have to do tarot daily, but what I will say is it helps if you repeatedly, continuously do it, right? Just so that way it gets stuck in your head. You're like, oh yeah, I've seen that one before, and the last time I saw it, this is what it meant, you know? And if you take extended breaks, it's harder to learn. It just takes longer. So it's not something that you have to do, but the more consistent you are with it, the more you do it, the easier it is to learn, the more it gets stuck in your head, and the more you grow and learn. You also don't need to know the meanings of all of the cards before you ever do your first tarot reading. Me, when I first started, I was flipping back and forth from the book. I was like, okay, I pulled so-and-so card. What does this mean in the book? And based off of that meaning in the book, I'd be like, okay, what was the question? How does that relate to the question? What's the vibe that I felt from this card? And I'd work all of that in to get an answer. So don't be afraid to use your resources. Don't be afraid to ask for help, because you don't have to know everything all at once. That's not something that's required. And that just puts a lot more stress and a lot more weight on you. That is really just unnecessary. So those are some of the things that I would recommend with getting started with tarot. Just really practice. Just really get into it. Use your resources. Start it. Make sure you feel connected to your deck. And it's really just about trusting your intuition, right? Being like, okay, what is my intuition telling me about this? What are the feelings that I'm feeling? And just going with that. Just being like the first thing you say, the first thing you get, the first thought that's come to your mind, just going with it, you know? Because the more often you do that, the better you'll be at trusting your intuition, the better you'll be at listening to your intuition, because sometimes it's really hard to listen to your intuition. And so one of the things that I really like about tarot is that it helps you cultivate that and strengthen that. So I hope this helps you. I hope this gives you a little bit of clarity and insight.